Oh, hold on a second. Perfect. Hello, everybody, and welcome back to the Jake's Take with Jacob Elyachar Podcast. I'm your host, Jacob Elyachar, the chief content producer and writer of jakestake.com. It's episode 60. It's a 60th milestone episode, and I have one of my dearest friends in the industry with me as my guest today. I've known him since his run on America's Got Talent back in 2013, so season 8. And since then, he has become a crossover artist and an incredible musician, one of the best vocalists in AGT history. In fact, one of my top 50 AGT acts of all time. But however, he just recently launched his book, Lyrics of My Life, My Story with Family, HIV, and Reality TV. Please help me welcome my dear friend, Branden James.
Hello there, everybody. How you doing?
I'm so happy that you are my guest on my 60th episode of this installment of this podcast.
Oh, thank you for giving me so much love and coverage over the years. I can't appreciate it enough.
All right, so guys, Branden and I have this is our first solo interview since 2013.
Yeah, I guess we've been corresponding via email, but that's about it, huh?
Yeah, so this is our first interview sit down in person. However, 2 years ago, I sat down with his husband, James, with Branden and his husband, James, in August 2018. So since we've last corresponded, Branden, how have you grown as a performer?
Well, 2018 feels about 20 years ago because February and March lasted a very long time. Let me think. Well, we've expanded our repertoire greatly, and we've traveled a lot more places. I feel like we kind of understand who we are as artists a lot more than we used to be, and what our audiences want and what they want to hear from us. Of course, we recorded I know we'll get to this in a minute, but we recorded a full-length studio album, which is something I'd never done with a big orchestra in Europe and a wonderful classical crossover producer. So we've grown quite a bit since 2018.
Awesome. And I've actually seen them perform in person, guys, and they're incredible. 54 Below. Fingers crossed that 2021 you guys return to 54 Below.
Yeah, it's on the books. We'll just cross our fingers and see what happens.
Absolutely. But however, we got to talk about your book, Lyrics of My Life, My Journey with Family, HIV, and Reality TV. When did you decide it was time to write it? Well,
if I'm completely honest, I wanted to tell this story on AGT. When I auditioned, I told the producers everything about me. I just decided I'd been to so many other auditions for American Idol and for The Voice, and I'd gotten through to the producer rounds before, but they all said, your voice is too classical. It's beautiful, but there's nothing we can really do for you in this environment. So one of my friends said, audition for AGT. And I was thinking about, well, what is my story? And there are other things I could talk about things that have happened in my life. But I thought, you know what? I'm gonna be honest and authentic and tell people what I really am about. So fast forward to just before the live rounds of America's Got Talent, and I kind of pulled out last minute. The partner that I was dating at the time wasn't comfortable with me revealing my HIV status. So we ended up talking a lot about the struggles that I had with my sexuality and with my family and what that was like growing up. And then I sort of decided to continue that story after I was on the show, because I realized from hearing from so many different kids around the world who were struggling with the same thing and could really relate to their struggles with their parents. And I just wanted to see if I could help them more. So I started writing blogs on our website, and I really had no interest in writing books. I really wasn't interested in writing anything. But a couple of literary agents read the blogs and thought that they might make a good book. So I ended up signing with one in New York City, the Tobias Literary Agency, and he shopped around for a couple of book deals, and they agreed on writing a memoir and gave me 65,000 words and I had an editor working with Simon and Schuster, and kind of made it all happen. So I had no interest or dreams of being a writer, but I feel like when life hands you opportunities like that, you should take them, because you never know what's going to happen.
I totally agree. And I'm so happy you wrote this book. This book, I have the press copy right over here, and it's a really fabulous book. This has been a good read. I highly recommend everyone who want to go on AGT, or who have just done any reality shows, because this is a roadmap for people.
Your press copy is like twice the size of my real copy. I'm glad. You are well connected, my friend.
Thank you. You're so welcome. But however, when I heard about this, when we were talking offline years ago, when you first told me about this back in 2019, I was so happy for you. And I'm so happy that you were able to write this and share your story, because of all the people in AGT history, I think you're near the top of the list of people that I believe fans would love to hear from, and also not just the show, but also in music in general.
Thank you. Yeah, I still have so many AGT fans who've been following me since the beginning of my journey, and have been just so overwhelmingly supportive through everything. And welcomed James when I added him to my act, so to speak, and have loved the book and bought the book, and just continue to support me. And I'm just so grateful for it.
All right. So I love to hear about your writing process, because I write blogs. Yes, they talk about AGT, they talk about Masked Singer, they talk about music reviews and everything, but it is totally different to writing a lengthy piece like a memoir or something like that. Can you share that with my audience?
Yeah, absolutely. When I first set out to write the book, I had a couple of phone calls, conference calls with the editor and with the publisher, and they said normally in a memoir setting, you write in chronological order, and that the book should finish somewhere within 5 years of something that happened in your life. So I kind of picked a beginning, which was easy because it's where I was born and what time, to an event that was really life-changing for me, that happened in Chicago just after I was on AGT and before I moved back to the West Coast. So the writing process was really, it was kind of painful, to be honest, because to really want to paint the picture of living through all the memories that I had as a child, I had to relive them again. And it wasn't easy. I found myself being angry at times with my parents again, even though I've long forgiven them for every misunderstanding we had. I was very emotional about lots of things. I think that probably might be common when people write memoirs. But I really felt like I lived through some of those moments again, and yeah, it was a tough time. But as far as the process is concerned, it was really just about writing from beginning to end and kind of free form writing everything, and then working with the editor to decide, well, this is really relevant to the story, and this might not be as relevant, and this goes on a little long, and maybe we can move this section from here to there. So that's what my editor did for me in order to kind of restructure it and make the story wonderful. The other thing that a lot of people may or may not know about writing a memoir is, aside from celebrities that you might mention, public figures, or my immediate family, I had to get written permission from every single person I mentioned in the book, and then change their names, and also sometimes change different parts of the scenario so it wasn't obvious to the reader, if they knew who that person was, that they lived in Florida. So I had to pretend that they lived in Oregon or something like that. So you kind of theatricalize in a way for the reader in order to protect the identities of the people that you're talking about.
I was about ready to talk to you about that, because there are stuff that is personal. And especially I remembered vividly remembering reading your chapter about when your mom came to Switzerland and left that note.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I was 20 years old at the time, and my mom, I didn't have like a traditional coming out story. My mom told me that she knew that I was gay in the form of this letter that she wrote. And I remember her being there that week, and it was about 10 days. And for some reason, we weren't connecting at all. And she was very quiet, and she was journaling a lot, and she was reading in her Bible. And I just thought, well, I'm 20 years old. She's older than me, and maybe we're just not really gelling right now. Or I didn't think too much of it. And then she left that note, like you said, on the day that she left, on my television, which was about 14 pages long, handwritten. So I realized she'd been working on that the whole time. And it was rather devastating because the gist of the letter said that I don't agree with your lifestyle, neither does our family, and you're not welcome home until you fix it. And it was hard to handle because I couldn't understand what was in me that I actually needed to fix, because I've been known I was gay as long as I can remember. And it was a difficult time. I felt very bitter and angry toward them. And as a 20-year-old, you also don't hold back, and you're not always the most respectful person. So I'm sure I wasn't so nice to my parents in retaliation. When you're a young person, you're trying to find your own footing and to become an adult, and doing what your parents want or say is never the first option, even though at the same time it was very painful to know that they were disappointed in me. But yeah, it was so cathartic to write about all that again. I spent a lot of time either in hotels or airplanes or just laying in bed writing and crying. I really spent a lot of time crying and kind of reliving all those moments and thinking about what I did and what I regretted and what I wish I'd done differently. But in the end, the whole experience was so cathartic for me, and I felt so free when it was over. I really feel like just writing the book and putting pen to paper and telling that story and then rereading it for myself to realize what I went through really helped me get over some of the guilt and shame that I was holding on to for so many years.
And I gotta say another topic that I was very moved by was your openness to talk about HIV positive and a diagnosis in the book. It was very moving. As a longtime follower, as a person that has followed your career since you appeared on the AGT stage, it was very moving for me to read that. And my heart did break when I found out about the HIV thing, but I'm proud that you opened it up and you were honest about that. And there might be people in my audience who are watching this or listening to our conversation who might be HIV positive, and their families might be listening to this. So do you have any guidance for them?
Sure. I grew up in the 80s and 90s, and in those years, I remember seeing there was a film called And the Band Played On, which was also a book that dealt heavily with the HIV/AIDS crisis. And I remember watching that film one day after school, and of course, being attracted to some of the men on TV, but still didn't know exactly why, because I wasn't out and wasn't entirely sure of what it meant to be gay. But I think that what was really important about me writing about being HIV positive was number one, I did it for myself. I really wanted to be as authentic and transparent as I can, because I saw a glimpse of that on the TV show when I was transparent about my sexuality, my struggles, about kids really responding to that. So I wanted to kind of finish the story that I started on AGT, and I felt like I got to do that in this book. And there's still so much stigma, less in the United States, of course, because of advancement of drugs, but around the world, there's hundreds of countries where it's illegal to be gay. Some you can be put to death, but HIV is still a thing. It's still the leading cause of death amongst women in the world. It is still something that is transmissible. We don't have a cure for it. So I think it's important for people to know a little bit more about it. And if they could maybe see a normal guy living a healthy life, hopefully I can lead by example and show others who might be going through their own HIV struggles or worried about their own status that there is light at the end of the tunnel, and medications are wonderful now. And if you take care of yourself and make sure your mental health is in a good state, then there's nothing that's going to stop you from getting through it.
And I got to commend you, because you and James are positive role models for the LGBT community. You are. Yes, you are. You definitely are role models for a lot of people.
Thank you. I kind of felt a responsibility to be something like that. Once you have younger people looking up to you and looking to you for guidance, I really felt like that was kind of became a calling of mine.
Awesome. So I want to talk near the end of Lyrics of My Life. You talked in length about your AGT experience, from waiting to perform for the judges to performing on the Radio City Music Hall stage. So what are some of the stories from your AGT experience that would surprise the show's fans?
Let's see. The year I was on the show, Howard Stern, Howie Mandel, Mel B, and Heidi Klum were the judges. So I think one thing that often surprises people when they ask me about the show is that I tell them that Howard Stern is a very warm, friendly guy. He'll just give you a big bear hug and be as genuine as you could possibly imagine, because his personality, especially on radio, was it and is so crass and vulgar and kind of grumpy, and he seemed kind of grumpy on the show, but he's just the nicest, warmest person you can imagine. Also, people asked me, was there a lot of backstage drama? Because they highlight these things on other shows, not so much on AGT, but Big Brother and things like that, where people are having conflicts because they're stuck together. And the producers of AGT treated us like royalty. They were so kind to us, and they made sure that we were always comfortable, that we never wanted to perform something that we didn't feel 100% comfortable performing. Obviously, when I told them at the time that I didn't want to talk about my HIV story, they said, no worries. There's plenty of things in your life that we can talk about, and we're okay with that. So my experience was that they were wonderful, warm people all across the board. And I think a lot of people expected them to treat contestants poorly because they do on some other shows, and that they're kind of cutthroat, but it wasn't like that at all. It was such a nice, open, affirming environment. And we all got along as contestants, I think, as a result of that.
And I hear this all the time from people that I just spoke with Vicky Barbalack earlier this year, and Voices of Service. They were both of them said that, especially Voices of Service, they said season 14 of they could say that it's one of the best seasons from town because they all performed and got along with each other. There was all stuff. And this is why I love AGT more than other shows like Idol or Big Brother. It's because it's unanimous. You're all performing stuff. And I even saw that Alan Silva tweeted something from Double Dragons and said that the Double Dragon sisters were like real friends to him in the past 2 weeks than some of his fake friends that he's known throughout his life. And I commend that.
Yeah, you end up spending, it was really a course of 9 months that I spent on the TV show, flying kind of zigzagging from here to there. And a bulk of that time was in New York City at Radio City Music Hall at the time where the show was broadcast. And you really get to know other contestants like family. They become your family. There's a lot of downtime. You're all kind of waiting around. TV is doesn't happen as nearly as fast as it looks when it's all edited together and has a shiny packaging around it. But so there was a lot of downtime to really get to know each other, and I made some long-lasting friendships, a lot of colleagues that I still work with and concertize with. So yeah, I wouldn't regret it at all. I would actually, I would actually be on the show again if I could. I think the one part about it that, in hindsight, that I wish I'd had a little more chutzpah in my performance. I feel like what I know now about performing and how to connect with an audience, if I could go out there and do it all over again, I'd kill it.
I gotta say though, I love your Raise Me Up. I just got done with Hallelujah, and I still am going to put this on public record. You and James need to contact Christina Ray and try to arrange Hallelujah, because to hear your voices you harmonize together would be absolutely outstanding.
That's a very good idea. I'm going to take you up on that.
Alrighty. So, and it's hard to believe that your AG2 journey was 7 years ago. And this year, season 15, the 15th anniversary season. So what does it mean to be a part of AGT's legacy?
Well, it's so amazing that AGT has remained the most popular show of the summer for 15 years. It's just kudos to them. I think back to what you were saying about why you like it maybe better than some other reality shows like The Voice, American Idol, Big Brother. What I really love about it is that they let all ages and all walks of life and all different types of acts compete against one another. So it's not pitting singers against singers. You're pitting a singer against an acrobat or a comedian or a magician. And I find that really interesting. And it kind of takes the rivalry out of it, because there's no one in your immediate lane who's a huge threat to you. When it gets down to smaller groups of acts, because you don't feel direct competition when you're up against a comedian. You're just wowed by what they can do, and you do your own thing, and everyone kind of gets along.
And you had several major players on your season: Kenichi, Taylor Williamson, also not to mention the Forte tenors as well. Same with Cammie Bradley. You guys were all so unique and so different.
Yeah. I think being a part of the AGT legacy I feel very grateful to have done it, because it's a brand that you can kind of carry with you forever. It certainly opened up a lot of doors for me and gave me a lot of name recognition that I didn't have before. So I feel super grateful for that.
All right, awesome. So now we got to get to the coronavirus pandemic. So how did it challenge you and James as performers, and how did you two overcome those obstacles?
Ooh, that's a long story.
We have time.
Well, the first thing that happened to us during the coronavirus pandemic is that we got the coronavirus. We had been traveling around the world since January. Actually, on January 12th, we were on the Diamond Princess, a luxury cruise line, playing a show. And that was the same show a week later that a major outbreak happened on. And it was the first outbreak. So just a week earlier, we were on that ship. The virus was probably running around. And we kind of hugged our new friends goodbye that we'd met over the course of those 2 weeks. And then a week later, of course, the news broke, and the ship was quarantined, and one of our friends ended up in a Tokyo hospital for 93 days.
Wow.
And was not allowed out of isolation until he could produce 2 negative COVID tests.
Wow.
And then many of our other friends from different ships were just stranded for a long time. I mean, some to the point where they were racing to get to another port just to get food. And they were at sea with nowhere to get off for again, in the high 80s and 90 something days. We were in Puerto Vallarta for a long period of the early COVID days while we were sort of just getting scares about it potentially coming over to the United States, but it hadn't happened yet. And then 3 days before we came down with symptoms, we were on a ship in South America, and then we flew to Las Vegas and played this corporate event that happened to be only at 50% capacity. There were 2,500 people there instead of 5,000, because people were already very concerned about the virus and what was coming. And then as soon as we got off the ship the next day, there was a giant outbreak on the ship. 14 people died. They were pulling some of our friends who worked in different departments down to the medical center to help people, because they didn't have enough medical staff to care for what was happening. It was just crazy and devastating. We just feel very lucky to have gotten off the ship, gotten through the conference, and been in our own home in New York City when we actually came down with COVID. So luckily for us, it was it was a little bit worse for James. He ran a 101 fever for 4 or 5 days, and had a really bad chesty cough and was weak. And I just kind of had and lost his taste and smell. I had a chesty cough and a headache and kind of felt really run down, but I recovered a lot quicker than he did. We're just grateful that there hasn't been a resurgence like there has been in some other patients where it kind of goes dormant. You feel fine for a while, and then you get another wave of it, so to speak. Nothing like that's happened to us. We don't have any lung issues, so we just feel very lucky to have recovered. So, but to continue your question about how it challenged us as performers, we knew that we had to keep working as much as we could. We didn't just want to kind of sit around and collect unemployment and bog down our government by spending more money. So we figured out very quickly how to get on the virtual concert scene. And we ended up using a platform called StageIt, which we really loved. And they were very helpful to us. And we played 14 virtual concerts over the first 12 weeks of quarantine. It was actually really fun. The only thing I really missed was having the energy exchange between you and the audience, and having no applause or nothing after you finish a performance. You're kind of like, well, okay, moving on to the next one. It's a very strange feeling. But I just felt really grateful. People were so generous. We set a ticket price for something, and so many people banded together, and they understood what people in nightlife businesses like entertainment, restaurants, bars, what people were going through and what it meant for them to have everything shut down. So some people overpaid by $500 for our $10 ticket, and really made us feel grateful, and also put food on the table and made sure that we could keep doing what we do. So we just feel really grateful that all of that took place. And then as our 2020 continued to cancel, one gig would drop off after another. Every day we get a new phone call or an email that says, this gig in November is canceled. Your gigs in December are canceled. And in June, it seems so far away. We had a couple of things scheduled in the Northeast. They were sort of on again, off again. They said, no, this isn't happening. Oh, yes, it is again. No, it's not. Actually, we got the green light from the governor. We can open. So the first place we came was here where I am at the moment, which is in Ogunquit in Maine, which is in southern Maine, just about 45 minutes drive south of Portland. And it's a tiny little town. It's about 1.5 streets, and there's 2 music venues and a few bars and about 50 restaurants. And it's right on a beautiful coastline, just a quintessential New England. And we played our shows, and the owner said, why don't you just come stay here for the summer? So that
is an incredible offer. That is one incredible offer.
Yeah, we just feel so grateful. And every week we play 2 shows, and they've been full every night. And we just feel grateful that people are hungry for a live entertainment right now. And we understood very quickly, performing in front of live audiences again, that people needed live music as much as we needed to play it for people. So it was a very symbiotic exchange.
And I am so thrilled that you and James are healthy. I am, behalf of my audience, we're so grateful that you guys have survived it and were able to overcome this thing.
Us too. Yeah, it's been a lot worse for many people. I've lost some friends in their 20s and 30s, and quite a few other friends and acquaintances in 50s and 60s and older. So it's not just a virus that kills a certain race or vulnerable people or older people. It actually does. I believe I just read in the Washington Post or the New York Times that the death rate amongst people who are in their 30s is actually 3% of all cases. So just be careful out there. Young people aren't invincible.
Agreed. So we got to talk about this. We've had so much serious talk throughout this conversation. We got to line things up. So this summer, you and James dropped your debut album, Shades Sing Dreams. How long did it take you guys to record the album?
let's see. I want to say November 2018. We firmed everything up. We were over in Europe doing some work, and we flew to our producer's house in Belgium. He lives in this little town called Bruges, where he grew up, and that's where his studio is, in his childhood home that he since bought his mother out of. And we kind of sat over a weekend and deliberated about which songs would fit us, and he kind of figured out more about our sound, like our sound. The cello is just as important as the vocals because we're a duo, and we wanted to make sure that was clear and that came through in the recordings. So we did all of that, and then the following June, or maybe it was even May 2019, we spent 6 weeks in the studio recording everything. He'd done a lot of the arrangement work already. So we recorded all the cello and the vocals in a couple of music videos actually in his studio. We spent 12 hours a day, 6 days a week, recording and just trying to get things as perfect as possible. And then he went to to Budapest, in Hungary, to work with the Budapest Art Orchestra. And that's where the really lush orchestral arrangements come from. So it was a process of, we crowdfunded the album, put all the plans in place, recorded it, and then mixed and mastered it. So it was really a process of about 1.5 years. That's probably how long it took.
I gotta say, your collaboration with Shoshana Bean Perfect, that was brilliant.
Oh, thank you. I love that song and that arrangement. That's something that James worked on, kind of reimagined the Beyonce Ed Sheeran version. And Shoshana's vocal talents are just like catastrophic. They're out of this world. So it was just a joy to be able to collaborate with her.
Awesome. So we have 3 more questions to go. So what are your favorite social media platforms? Facebook, Instagram, YouTube, TikTok, and why are they your favorites?
That's a good question. I love Instagram and YouTube in particular because I feel like there's a lot of wonderful opportunities to create art on them, as opposed to air your dirty laundry or your political views, or kind of go into this Facebook hole where you're fighting with your friends. A lot of that happens on Facebook. It's more like a visual journal, where I like the photographic aspect of Instagram and the story aspect, and really think that's a great platform. And YouTube for the same reason, because there's so many creative people out there doing amazing things with the videos that they make. TikTok, I have spent some time on. We haven't done a lot of TikTok videos ourselves, but it's really easy to go into a TikTok hole because the videos are so short. You just kind of swipe up and there's something else funny. There's one lady in particular called One Funny Mommy, who was absolutely hilarious. And during quarantine, she was stuck at home with her kids, and she kind of has this sarcastic way of explaining who she is and how her kids and her husband are driving her crazy. And she's just hilarious. So I always go back to TikTok and watch her, but I haven't been as active on TikTok lately.
Alrighty, so one of the most important questions. Why should my audience check out Lyrics of My Life, My Journey with Family, HIV, and Reality Television?
Well, I think your audience should check out my new book. And if they're curious to know a little bit more about HIV, if they maybe haven't been around someone or met someone who's HIV positive, I think it's important for people, or even been around people who are LGBTQ. It's important for people to understand how personal and sometimes painful coming out can be. It's important for people to understand how painful it is when you find out your HIV diagnosis, no matter what sort of how it came out or what the result was. But I think most important, especially in the year of a pandemic, HIV is a pandemic that we still don't have a cure for, and still runs its course worldwide. And I think that despite the fact that we don't have a cure, that we've managed, with the help of medicine and research and funding, to get to a place where people can live long and full and healthy lives, and maybe everyone outside isn't worried about getting it from shaking someone's hand. And I hope that will give people hope in the time of COVID-19 that we'll get to that place together also. And also that perhaps people who do carry stigma with them about HIV, that maybe because of COVID-19, they'll have a little more sympathy for people who contract viruses and understand a little bit more about what we go through and what life is like. So I think it's a good, compelling reason to read the book right now, because it's relevant.
All right. So speaking of the book and your music, where can they be able to buy the book, number one? And number two, where can they download your music?
Okay, so you can buy the book. You can buy autographed copies if you like on our website, and we will mail them to you. And that's brandenjames.com. It's BRANDEN James.com. So I spell my name with a funny E at the end. Or you can go to Amazon or Barnes & Noble or the Simon & Schuster page and just look up Branden James, Lyrics of My Life. You'll find a lot of different options to get the book. We always like to encourage people to support their local bookstores. So if anyone listening has a local bookstore that they like, they can always call them up and they'll order it for them and get it that way. And then as far as music is concerned, we're everywhere on Spotify, Amazon, Pandora, Apple Music. You can stream the music. You can buy it there. Again, we also sell autographed copies of CDs and download cards for those of you who threw your CD player away 20 years ago, like most people. But that can be purchased on our website as well.
Alrighty, so guys, you can download more episodes of the Jake's Take with Jacob Elyachar Podcast on Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Spotify, and Spreaker. Just type in Jake's Take with Jacob Elyachar, JACOB ELYACHAR Podcast on those 4 platforms. And also, please subscribe to my social media channels, Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, and YouTube. All Jacob Elyachar, JACOB ELYACHAR. And guys, if you want to find out how I graded Branden during his season of America's Got Talent, plus read my recap season 15 of AGT, plus more interviews from AGT alum and music reviews, including Branden James' music review and our 54 Below debut, head to jakestake.com. Once again, it's jakes-take.com. Branden, thank you so much for being my guest on my 60th milestone episode. I'm very grateful that we're friends, and I am so proud of all of the progress that you have made over the past 7 years.
Thank you so much for including me on such a special occasion, and I really, really appreciate all the love and support that you give me and James. I couldn't be more grateful for it.
Thank you so much. Please tell James that we all said hello to him.
Thank you. I will. And please enjoy the rest of your time and stay safe. And we look forward to seeing you again sometime in New York City.
Absolutely. Have a great day, everyone. Until next time, enjoy the Jake's Take with Jacob Elyachar Podcast. Bye.